In today's consumer culture, we are accustomed to things that become obsolete faster than we can remove the factory packaging. Your smartphone starts to slow down after 2 years, your car needs major repairs after 5 years, and your household appliances break down immediately after the warranty expires. But if we look back centuries to the scorching sands of ancient Egypt, we see a completely different picture of the world. There, objects were created that not only served their owners for a lifetime, but were also passed on to their grandchildren in unchanged condition, retaining their functionality and perfect form. Museum display cases around the world hold silent witnesses to that era. Bronze blades that, after 3,000 years, are still capable of cutting a sheet of paper. It seems like an impossible paradox. A civilization that did not know steel. Watch the video to the end to learn how ancient engineers used the properties of simple copper to make it harder than modern iron, and why their manufacturing philosophy could save our future. What if I told you that everything you believed about the primitiveness of the ancients is not true? We are used to imagining an ancient forge as a place of brute force, where sweaty men simply hammer away at red-hot metal. But an Egyptian workshop was more like a laboratory, where craftsmen felt the metal at the molecular level without microscopes. They did not have thermometers to measure the melting temperature, but they unerringly determined the right moment by the shade of the liquid bronze's glow. It was an art where intuition, honed over generations, replaced complex instruments and computing machines. Instead of struggling with the material, trying to bend it to their will, Egyptian craftsmen entered into a kind of dialogue with it. They understood that each piece of ore had its own character, its own hidden impurities and characteristics that should not be removed. When molten copper with added tin filled the mold, it was not just a production process, but the birth of a unique object. The craftsman knew that the slightest air bubble inside the casting would become a fatal weakness in 10 years, so the casting process was slow and meditative. Particular attention was paid to the mold itself, which was often made of stone or specially prepared clay that could withstand enormous temperatures. These molds were reusable, but required careful preparation before each pouring to ensure that the surface of the future product was perfectly smooth. Any roughness at this stage meant hours of additional polishing, so perfectionism was built in from the very beginning. The liquid metal had to flow smoothly, filling all the curves of the mold, creating a monolithic structure without internal stresses. After the blank had cooled, a process began that radically distinguishes the ancient approach from the modern conveyor belt. The metal was not simply sharpened, it was cold forged, compacting the structure of the edge to incredible hardness. The master applied thousands of small, precise blows, literally compressing the crystal lattice of the metal on the cutting edge. This created an effect in which the blade became as hard as glass, while the main part of the blade remained flexible and elastic.
It is flawed. Send it back to the fire.
There was no room for haste or desire to save time in this technology, as each stage was controlled with maniacal precision. If the master saw that the blank had a defect, it was immediately sent for remelting, without any attempts to hide the defect or correct it cosmetically. Quality was a matter of honor and survival, not a marketing ploy to increase sales. A tool that came out of such a forge was an extension of the human hand. I would be very interested to hear your opinion on this matter. Do you think we are willing to pay for quality that will last for centuries, or do we prefer a world of disposable items?
Built to last generations, indeed. The craftsmanship is excellent. Consider it paid.
Of the glory of Egypt.
Are you ready to learn the truth about the most recognizable symbol of Egyptian military power? The Hoche is not just a curved sword, it is an ingenious engineering solution that combines the properties of an axe and a blade. Its shape, reminiscent of an animal's leg, was created not for beauty, but to solve specific physical problems on the battlefield. The center of gravity of this weapon was shifted in such a way as to increase the inertia of the blow, allowing it to penetrate defenses that were inaccessible to straight swords. The secret of its durability lay in the fact that the hoopsh was cast as a single piece, together with the hilt. It had no rivets, screws, or welded joints, which are the weakest points of any structure. This eliminated the possibility of the blade flying off the hilt under heavy impact, which often happened with composite weapons of other peoples. The monolithic bronze construction worked as a single entity, evenly distributing the vibration from the impact along its entire length. Egyptian metallurgists understood the properties of bronze perfectly and knew that it could be brittle if handled incorrectly. Therefore, the back of the blade was made thick and massive, acting as a stiffener that prevented deformation. The cutting edge was elongated and compacted, creating a razor-sharp edge supported by a powerful base. This combination allowed the weapon to withstand blows against hard shields and wooden structures without the risk of breaking in half. The unique crescent shape also played a role in maintaining the sharpness of the blade over a long period of time. Thanks to the bend, the impact was not just a collision of surfaces, but a sliding motion that dulled the edge less. This was the principle of the guillotine, transferred to a hand weapon, ensuring effective cutting with less effort. This design allowed the warrior to conserve strength and maintain the functionality of the weapon even in protracted campaigns. The hoopsh handle did not have a guard in the usual sense, but its shape reliably protected the hand due to its ergonomics. The handle was often wrapped in leather or wood, but the base always remained the metal part of the blade itself. This ensured that even if the wrapping rotted or burned, the weapon would remain functional in the owner's hand. Reliability was prioritized over comfort. Why do you think such an unusual weapon shape disappeared from use, giving way to straight swords? In the next chapter, you will learn the secret of creating an item Guess how long it took to create this? If the hoopsh was a triumph of metallurgy, then the Egyptian composite bow was the pinnacle of bioengineering thought in the ancient world. It was not just a weapon, but a complex device that accumulated kinetic energy with an efficiency that modern engineers envy. It took 1 to 2 years to create one such bow, and this process could not be accelerated for any amount of money. It was a technology where time was the main and irreplaceable ingredient. The basis of the design was a wooden core, but not from a single piece, but from carefully selected strips of different types of wood. Craftsmen used maple or birch for flexibility. The wood was dried for years under special conditions to completely eliminate deformation after assembly. Any residual moisture in the wood could cause the bow to warp or crack when tensioned. But the main secret was the multi-layered construction. Tendons were glued to the back of the bow and horn plates to the belly. Tendons taken from the back or legs of bulls were dried, separated into the finest fibers, and impregnated with glue. When the bow was drawn, the tendons stretched, accumulating enormous energy, striving to return the bow's shoulders to their original position. The horn plates, on the contrary, worked to compress. The gluing process was carried out in stages, with long breaks for each layer to dry in a controlled atmosphere. The craftsmen knew that if they rushed and glued the next layer before the previous one had completely dried, rot would form inside, destroying the weapon from within. Therefore, bow-making workshops resembled wine cellars, where time passed slowly and steadily. The readiness of the bow was determined not by a schedule. If you are impressed by the fact that it took years of painstaking work to create a single item of perfect quality, Want to learn a secret that will change your perception of the Bronze Age? Before tin became the main component for creating classic bronze, they created copper alloys with arsenic, obtaining a material that was many times superior to pure copper in terms of its characteristics. Arsenic bronze had an amazing property. It became stronger when forged and was easier to cast into complex shapes. Ancient metallurgists probably did not know Mendeleev's periodic table, but they empirically found ores rich in the necessary impurities. When such ore was smelted, it emitted poisonous fumes, which undoubtedly shortened the lives of the craftsmen, but the result was worth the sacrifice. The metal acquired a silvery hue and increased hardness, which was critical for the creation of tools and weapons. It was a price paid in health for the technological superiority of civilization. The main feature of this material was its ability to be hardened by cold deformation. When a craftsman hammered the blade of such a dagger, the crystal structure of the metal changed, becoming incredibly dense and rigid. While ordinary copper would bend under impact, arsenic bronze sprang back and retained its sharpness. This made it possible to create thin, long blades that did not turn into useless scrap metal after the first battle. Another advantage was that arsenic acted as a deoxidizer, removing oxygen from the melt. This made the castings less porous, denser, and more resistant to corrosion. Weapons made from this alloy were less susceptible to the effects of time and aggressive environments. Even after thousands of years, objects made of arsenic bronze are found in better condition than later products made of other alloys. Do you think it is justified to use dangerous technologies to create more perfect and durable things? In the next chapter, you will learn how the Egyptians created a means of transport that was lighter than a feather but stronger than stone. The Egyptian war chariot was the sports car of the ancient world, the pinnacle of design and woodworking. Unlike the heavy and clumsy carts of its neighbors, the Egyptian chariot weighed only about 30 kilograms. It could be lifted by one person, carried over obstacles, and continue moving, which gave it incredible tactical flexibility. The secret of such lightness and strength lay in the use of advanced woodworking techniques, in particular steam bending. Craftsmen used different types of wood for different structural components, understanding the unique properties of each material. For the axle, which bore the main load, they chose hard and elastic elm, which did not break when hitting rocky ground. For the drawbar and body frame, they used flexible ash, which was pre-steamed and bent into the desired shape. After drying, the wood retained the specified bend, possessing internal tension that acted like a spring.
See how it bends yet remains unbroken? This ash will hold true on the field.
Indeed, Master. It is your finest work yet.
The wheels of Egyptian chariots were a real technological breakthrough. They had spokes rather than being solid discs. The use of 4 and later 6 spokes made it possible to radically reduce the weight of the wheel while maintaining its rigidity and strength. The wheel rim was assembled from several segments connected by a complex system of pins and grooves that held together without a single nail. The rim was covered with raw leather on the outside. The chariot's design made virtually no use of metal fasteners, which could loosen due to vibration. Instead, all joints were glued and wrapped with rawhide straps and tendons. This soft fastening system acted as a shock absorber, dampening shocks and vibrations when driving over rough terrain. The chariot did not resist the unevenness of the road. The platform on which the charioteer and archer stood had a woven bottom made of leather straps, similar to a tightly stretched net. It was the world's first active suspension system, which protected the crew's legs from fractures when driving fast. Thanks to this, warriors could shoot accurately with a bow, even at full gallop, which was impossible for their opponents in rigid carts. Comfort here was directly related to combat effectiveness. What if I told you that Egyptian shields were closer to modern Kevlar than to simple wooden boards? We are used to seeing wooden shields in movies that shatter into splinters from the blow of a sword, but the reality was different. The Egyptian shield was a complex composite based on specially treated bullhide. It was not just a piece of leather, but a material that had undergone a complex chemical and mechanical process of transformation. The manufacturing technology began with the selection of the hide, with preference given to old bulls with thick and rough skin. The hide was soaked, the hair was removed, and then it was subjected to a process resembling boiling in oil. This changed the structure of the collagen fibers, making them incredibly tough and at the same time viscous. After drying, such leather became as hard as wood, but did not splinter or crack when struck. Often, the shield consisted of several layers of such leather, glued together under pressure, with the fibers running in different directions. It was ancient plywood, but made of organic material, which gave it unique protective properties. A sword or axe blow would not cut through such a shield, but would get stuck in its dense layers. This gave the warrior precious seconds to disarm an opponent whose blade was stuck in the shield. The wooden base, if used at all, was only a light frame for stretching the skin, not the main protective element. The shape of the shield with a rounded top was optimized to protect the head and neck, while leaving the warrior's field of vision unobstructed. The lightness of the construction allowed the shield to be actively maneuvered to parry blows, rather than simply passively hiding behind it. Active defense is always more effective than passive defense. Such a shield was resistant to arrows. The tip lost energy as it passed through the tough layers of leather. Even if an arrow pierced the shield, it often got stuck without fatally wounding the fighter behind it. In the desert, where wood was scarce, the use of leather was an ingenious solution to the resource problem. Animal husbandry provided material for the protection of the army on an industrial scale. Why do you think modern bulletproof vests use a multi-layered principle so similar to the structure of an ancient shield? In the next chapter, we will learn how the very nature of Egypt helped keep weapons in perfect condition. Egypt's climate is often perceived as a harsh test for all living things, but for inanimate matter, it has become an ideal preservative. The incredibly low humidity in the desert The lack of moisture in the air slows down oxidation and corrosion to almost zero. A bronze sword thrown into the sand could lie there for decades, only slightly tarnished but not destroyed. The dry sand acted as a natural abrasive and desiccant, instantly drying out any organic matter or moisture that came into contact with the object. This created conditions similar to a laboratory vacuum, where time seemed to stand still. Weapons depots and tombs sealed in the rocks became time capsules with an ideal microclimate. Stable temperatures and the absence of humidity fluctuations The Egyptians, observant by nature, noticed these properties of their land and used them to store strategic reserves. Grain, wood, and weapons were stored in special dry pits and rooms protected from the rare flooding of the Nile. They understood that water was the main enemy of metal and built their arsenals on high ground, far from the dampness of the river. It was a passive resource conservation strategy. In addition, the composition of Egyptian sand and soil often contained salts that formed a stable patina when in contact with bronze. This beautiful greenish-blue coating is not rust in the usual sense. It is a protective oxide film. It is so dense that it blocks oxygen from reaching the deeper layers of the metal, stopping corrosion forever. Nature itself created an anti-corrosion coating better than any modern chemistry. Organic materials such as the wood of the handles or the leather of the scabbards were also mummified in this climate. Bacteria and fungi, which usually destroy organic matter in a couple of years, simply could not survive and multiply without water. Therefore, we find not only metal blades, but also entire bows, feathered arrows, and even woven sandals of warriors. This gives us a complete picture of what the equipment looked like. Even if the weapons were used and damaged, the dry climate prevented microcracks from turning into pockets of rot or rust. A warrior could be sure that his sword would not rust from the inside after he wiped it with a rag after battle. This reliability of the environment allowed the Egyptians to worry less about constant lubrication and cleaning than warriors in humid Europe.
This axe is fine work, but the copper is soft. I offer this bronze ingot and the mirror.
The ingot and the mirror. Agreed, trader.
In ancient
It is a
Egypt,
fair
there was no
exchange.
concept of trash as we understand it today, especially when it came to metal. Bronze and copper were not just materials, they were equivalent to money, a currency that had real physical value. A broken sword or cracked axe was never thrown away. It was a valuable resource for recycling. The recycling system was perfected. If a weapon was broken beyond repair, it was sent back to the royal smithies to be remelted. Since bronze is an alloy that can be remelted
assistance
almost
moving this
indefinitely
stack
without
immediately.
significant loss
Bring
of
it to the main
quality,
furnace.
your grandfather's sword could become the tip of your grandson's spear and then part of a temple decoration. This created a continuous cycle of life for matter, where the form changed but the essence remained the same. This approach also dictated the attitude toward the production process itself. It was economically unprofitable to make poor quality products. If a poor quality item was made, it would have to be remade, wasting precious coal, which was in short supply in Egypt, and the craftsman's time. Therefore, from the outset, maximum effort was put into creating a durable product. The miser pays twice. This principle was understood by the Egyptians thousands of years before the saying appeared. Repairability was built into the design of any complex product. If the axle of a chariot broke, only the axle was replaced, not the entire vehicle. The handles of daggers and tools were attached so that they could be replaced when worn out without damaging the main metal part. Things were designed like a construction set, with parts that could be updated as needed.
Feel the weight, steady and true. It is fine work, merchant. Built to last generations.
This economy of scarcity and frugality fostered respect for labor and resources. Owning high-quality weapons was an investment of capital that did not depreciate over time. A bronze axe was expensive, but it was a liquid asset that could be exchanged for grain, livestock, or land.
I ask for a fair measure of your finest grain.
Agreed. A strong blade for a strong harvest.
One of the main reasons why Egyptian weapons have survived for millennia is their ingenious simplicity of design. A hapsh axe or mace has no moving parts, springs, gears, or complex mechanisms. The simpler the system, the less likely it is to fail in real-world conditions. The lack of mechanical complexity was compensated for by the skill of the user. Egyptian engineers understood that in the heat of battle, in sand and mud, any complex mechanism would inevitably jam. Therefore, they relied on monolithic forms and direct action physics. The effectiveness of a weapon depended not on clever devices, but on geometry, balance, and sharpening. This made the weapons completely reliable. They always worked as long as the warrior had the strength to lift them. Spears and javelins also followed this principle of minimalism: a sturdy shaft, a reliable tip, and a strong binding. No unnecessary decorations or details that could get caught or fall off. All the energy of the blow was transferred to the point of impact without any loss due to play or vibration of the components. It was pure physics embodied in matter.
O great Osiris, accept these offerings. Guide this soul.
The incredible durability of Egyptian objects was based not only on technology, but also on a deep philosophical and religious concept. The Egyptians did not believe in death as the end. For them, earthly life was only a preparation for eternal life in the fields of Ialu. The objects that surrounded a person were supposed to serve them in the afterlife, which meant they had to be eternal. To make something that would rot away in a year was to deprive oneself of comfort in eternity. The tombs of pharaohs and nobles were filled with the best weapons, furniture, and utensils created for endless use. Craftsmen worked with the awareness that their creations would be seen by the gods, and one cannot cut corners before the gods. This religious perfectionism raised the bar of quality to unattainable heights. The craftsman's responsibility extended beyond his earthly life. In this culture, time was perceived as cyclical rather than linear. The past, present, and future were intertwined. When creating an object, the craftsman entered into a dialogue with eternity, trying to overcome decay and destruction. Stone, gold, and bronze were chosen precisely for their ability to withstand time. It was a civilization that declared war on oblivion and won. Compare this to our modern culture, where an item becomes obsolete before it is physically worn out. We create trash in order to buy new trash, perpetuating an endless race of consumption. For an Egyptian, such a philosophy would be madness, a senseless waste of sacred resources and vital energy. They valued stability and constancy, while we value novelty and change. The history of Egyptian weapons is a mirror that reflects not only the technological genius of antiquity, but also our own contemporary problems. We have seen how a combination of unique alloys, thoughtful geometry, wise use of natural conditions, and a special philosophy created timeless masterpieces. These objects were created by people who did not rush through life. What do you think about this contrast between ancient quality and modern fragility? What other topics from the history of technology would you like to explore in future videos? Share your ideas in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on new journeys into the past.